Good morning. My name is Juanita McKay. I am pleased to have this opportunity to talk to you about plagiarism in the pulpit. Before I do, it is important that we understand what plagiarism is. According to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, plagiarism is, and I quote, the act of using another person's words or ideas without giving credit to that person. When we speak of plagiarism in the pulpit, we are speaking of using someone else's sermon as our own. According to Christianity Today's Leadership Journal, where high-profile pastors have been accused of plagiarism, they give examples such as the Reverend John E. McGinn, an Episcopal priest in Massachusetts, who retired after being accused. Another report by them was that of Reverend Alan O. Jackson from the National City Christian Church in Washington, who was charged with not only plagiarizing sermons, but also selling them for $50. It appears that plagiarism is increasing in the pulpit and has not gone unnoticed. When pastors claim sermons that is not their own, they are speaking hollow words and are committing two sins. The first being the sin of omission, the second, the sin of commission. As stated in an article on the website entitled The End Time, Preaching Hollow Words, when preachers plagiarize. This is when they know they have plagiarized and feel that it is okay. Also stated in the same article was an example where a deacon board dismissed the preacher just for this reason. According to the Mid-America Christian University Student Academic Honesty and Integrity Policy, plagiarism is considered a serious offense, bringing about one of two penalties. The first would be leniency, where the student would be allowed to rewrite their paper without plagiarizing and receiving a lesser grade, or an extreme punishment of expulsion. I do not find that there is any difference in academic plagiarism versus plagiarism in the pulpit. They both are serious offenses. There is nothing worse than living in the shadows of someone else's sermon. In order for God's light to shine through us, we must minister in truth and from our own hearts. And doing this, we convey to the audience the wisdom we attain through our studies, our researching, and our prayers. A practice I had before teaching Sunday school class was kneeling at the altar and praying for God to remove me and for Him to come into me. I would get very excited when this happened because He would answer my prayers and speak words that I knew was not mine. I would often tell the class, "Thus saith the Lord." I would be so tickled because I knew it wasn't me speaking, but the miracle of God speaking through me for His purpose. When using someone else's words without acknowledging the sources, we are breaking one of the 10th commandments, which is thou shalt not steal. Are we really allowing God's light to shine through us when we are plagiarizing? Matthew 5:16 states, "Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven." The key word here is your, not theirs. Are we really doing God's work hiding behind someone else's work? When we do this, we are not being true to our own calling. We are only mimicking someone else's. Therefore, it is their light that's shining and not ours. There are many knowledgeable Christians attending churches today. In some cases, they are more knowledgeable than the speaker himself. I can remember when teaching Sunday school, I made an erroneous statement, and it was quickly picked up by one of the mothers in the church. I know that there are many devout Christians who are very familiar with religious books, religious statements, as well as sermons. For the most part, they could probably teach a sermon themselves. We cannot deny that there is plagiarism in the pulpit. By all means, don't get me wrong, I am not speaking of all, but of some. I can imagine that there are many excuses for this, such as being so busy ministering throughout the week that they didn't have time to prepare their own sermon, until the fact that they heard a sermon that was so compassionate to them that they wanted to share that same sermon with their congregation. Whatever the excuse may be, there is no excuse for plagiarizing in the pulpit. If we want our light to shine unto our church members, it is important that we take the time to create our own sermon and reflect the works that is put into it creating. We must acknowledge that there are some members in our church who may have a greater understanding of the word than we do. It is wise to remember that what God reveals to some is a secret to others. Thank you.